The rain hammered against the windshield like 1,000 angry fists, and the wipers could not keep pace. 11:47 in the evening on Pacific Coast Highway, the stretch of asphalt that connected downtown Los Angeles to the cliffs above the Pacific, empty except for the occasional ghost of a car passing through the darkness. The headlights cut through sheets of water that fell from a sky the color of old bruises, and inside the lead black SUV, Dante Castellano sat perfectly still, his expensive Italian suit unmarred by a single wrinkle, his silver rings catching the glow of the dashboard. 42 years old. Dark hair silvered at the temples. A scar that ran from below his left eye to his jawline like a blade had once tried to split him in half and failed. His eyes were storm gray and fixed on nothing, seeing nothing, feeling everything that had happened in the last 4 hours. His own brother. Blood. Family. Betrayal. The kind of betrayal that makes a man question whether anything in this world was real. "Boss," Vinny said from the driver's seat, his hand steady on the wheel even though the road was treacherous. "We should head back. The rain's getting worse." Dante did not respond. He simply stared out at the empty highway stretched before them like a mouth ready to swallow the whole world. Then the headlights caught her. A figure on the shoulder of the road, stumbling, barely upright. Small. Thin. Soaked completely through. Even from a distance, Dante could see the way she moved like a wounded animal trying to find shelter that did not exist. The white of her uniform stood out against the darkness like a ghost learning how to walk. "Slow down," Dante said, and his voice was deep and solid like an oath spoken in a cathedral. Vinny eased off the accelerator. The SUV drifted closer. In the back seat, Pietro shifted his weight, his hand moving instinctively toward the 9mm at his ribs. Men in their business did not stop for stragglers on empty highways. Men in their business kept moving forward. But Dante was watching her now, and something in the way she stumbled had carved through the rage that had consumed him all evening. She did not see them coming. The rain had stolen her world down to the next 5 feet of pavement, the next breath she could manage, the next step that did not send needles of fire up through her feet. Sofia Morales was 27 years old but looked decades older, her dark hair plastered to skin that had forgotten what healthy color looked like, mascara running in black rivers down her pale cheeks. Her orthopedic shoes had split open at the seams, and blood mixed with rainwater dripped onto the asphalt with a sound like a clock counting down. In her left hand, she clutched a piece of paper. A letter. The words "final notice" stamped across it in letters large enough to be read from heaven. $85,000 owed to a debt collector in 12 days or her life would not simply end, it would be erased. She did not hear the engine slow. Did not feel the moment the SUV pulled alongside her. Her entire existence had narrowed to the sensation of pain and the absolute certainty that there was nowhere left to go. The SUV was inches away when she looked up. The headlights were so bright they erased her vision completely. She saw only white. Only light. For a moment she thought perhaps this was mercy. Perhaps the universe had decided she had suffered enough and was offering an exit. She stepped forward instead of backward. The front bumper caught her at the hip and she flew forward, her small body crashing onto the hood with a sound like thunder collapsing into itself. Her palms scraped across black paint that cost more money than she had earned in 3 years, and the letter flew from her fingers, spinning through the rain like a white bird with broken wings. The SUV had already begun to brake. Tires gripped wet asphalt. The vehicle came to a complete stop with Sofia's body still pressed against the hood, her breath coming in gasps that sounded like sobs. "Do not move," Dante said. "Do not move the car." Vinny's hands were locked at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. In the back, Pietro had both hands visible on the seat, showing they were empty, showing that whatever his boss was about to do, he would do it alone. The rear door opened. Dante stepped out into the rain without a coat, without hesitation, moving toward the front of the vehicle where Sofia lay gasping and bleeding. His expensive leather shoes splashed through puddles that reflected the red light of the brake lights. He did not touch her. He simply stood there, looking down at her broken body, his storm gray eyes taking in every detail. The uniform. The shoes. The blood. The way her entire frame trembled like a rabbit caught in a snare. Can you move? His voice was quiet now. A different kind of deep. Sofia tried to push herself backward, to slide off the hood, but pain shot through her hip where the bumper had struck her. She made a sound that was not quite a word, not quite a scream. Something between the two. Dante nodded once, as if she had answered a question he had asked himself rather than her. He gestured, and Vinny was there in seconds, opening the rear passenger door. Dante bent down, this man who commanded armies of armed men, who had never bent down for anything in his entire adult life, and he carefully, deliberately, lifted Sofia Morales off the hood of his SUV. She weighed nothing. Less than nothing. Like holding a coat filled with rain. He carried her toward the open door and placed her gently on the leather seat that had been sanitized by professionals and cost more than her annual salary. Her breath was coming in short, fractured gasps, and her eyes were wide with shock, with terror, with the kind of disorientation that comes when the world stops making sense. "What is your name?" Dante asked, standing in the rain outside the still open door. Sofia," she whispered, her voice trembling like a candle in the wind. "Sofia Morales." "Sofia," he repeated, as if testing the weight of the syllable. "What were you doing on this highway in the rain?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something flickered across her face. Recognition, perhaps, of what he was. The scar. The bearing. The way his men stood at his shoulders waiting for commands that might never come. She knew, somehow, that the universe had just changed her trajectory, and she had no framework for understanding why. "My apartment," she said. "It burned down. Everything. My daughter's clothes, my mother's," her voice broke like glass. "I have nothing left. The notice says," she gestured frantically, and that was when Dante saw it. Lying in the rain. The letter. The white paper soaked and streaming with water, the black ink beginning to blur. He walked over and picked it up. 30 seconds of reading. That was all he needed. $85,000 in 12 days. A debt that might as well have been a death sentence. "Where is your daughter?" Dante asked, his eyes still on the letter. "At my sister's house. She's safe." Sofia's words came faster now, tumbling out like she needed to convince him of something. "I work double shifts at the diner on 5th. I have money saved. I can pay something. I just need time. The letter says 12 days, but maybe if I explain." Dante turned back and looked at her. Really looked at her. At the way she was trying to convince a stranger to let her live. At the way her entire being was focused on not falling apart completely. "What is your daughter's name?" he asked. "Lily," Sofia whispered. "She's 5 years old and she can read already," and she stopped, understanding that none of this mattered. That she was describing a child to a man who could make people disappear. "Why are you asking me these things?" Dante did not answer. Instead, he held the soaking wet letter out to Vinny. "Take this." Take everything from her pockets. Sofia flinched, her entire body going rigid with terror. But then she saw that he was not ordering his men to hurt her. He was simply collecting the evidence of her devastation. She reached into her pocket with shaking fingers and pulled out what remained of her entire material wealth. A $5 bill, crumpled and worn thin from being held too many times. A dime. 3 pennies. $5.13 between her and complete annihilation. She placed these items in Vinny's waiting palm as if she were handing over the crown jewels. "What is the name of the man who owns your building?" Dante asked. "Robert Hargrove," Sofia said immediately. "He said if I didn't," she stopped. The shame of it rushed over her like a wave. "He said if I didn't," she could not finish. But Dante already understood. He had eyes. He could read what had happened to her the way other men read books. The bruises on her neck. The way she flinched at sudden movements. The absolute terror in her eyes that spoke of hands that had been unwanted. Something cold and dangerous stirred in his chest. "Get in the vehicle," Dante said quietly. "We are taking you somewhere safe." "I don't understand," Sofia whispered. "You do not have to understand yet. You simply have to survive the next few days without worrying about this." He held up the letter. The paper was falling apart in his fingers, the ink bleeding, the words dissolving into nothing. "This letter no longer exists." He dropped it on the highway. The rain dissolved it further. Within seconds, the debt had become illegible, and within minutes, it would blow away on the wind toward the ocean, toward oblivion. Sofia stared at the disintegrating paper and understood that something fundamental had shifted in the universe. Dante Castellano sat down across from her, his expensive suit soaked and dripping water onto the leather seats that his accountant had insisted cost $19,000. He did not care about the seats. He was looking at Sofia Morales, and in her broken face, he was seeing something he had not seen in so very long. A person who needed saving. And a man who finally had a reason to save someone. The SUV pulled back onto the highway, its taillights disappearing into the rain and the darkness. Before we continue, drop a like if this story is touching your heart. Share it with someone you love and subscribe so you do not miss what happens next. Now let us go back to the beginning. Let us travel back to the moment Sofia's world caught fire. Because you cannot understand how a woman ends up bleeding on a highway in the rain unless you understand everything she lost to get there. 6 hours earlier that same August evening, the air hung so thick you could taste copper and heat on your tongue. Murphy's Diner sat on a corner of Sunset Boulevard where the neon flickered like a dying heartbeat, and Sofia Morales stood behind the counter counting tips into a worn envelope that had been folded and refolded so many times the creases had become permanent scars. 17 hours on her feet. That was what the shift had been, not 16. 17 hours of smiling at people who looked through her like she was made of glass. 17 hours of pouring coffee into cups held by hands wearing gold watches that cost more than everything she owned. Her feet throbbed inside shoes so old the soles had separated from the leather, and she was down to $47 in singles and quarters. 47. In the bathroom mirror during her last break, she had looked at her reflection and barely recognized herself. 29 years old but looking like she had survived a war. Dark eyes that had forgotten how to hope. Black hair pulled into a bun so tight it pulled her face upward, making her cheekbones sharp enough to cut. She wore the diner uniform, white with pale blue trim, stained with the evidence of other people's meals. Coffee here, grease there, a smudge of something red that might have been ketchup or might have been something worse. The cook, Miguel, sat at the counter rolling cigarettes and smoking them down to nothing. He had been kind to her for 4 years. Had saved her plates of food that would have been thrown away. Had never asked her for anything except that she show up. "You going to walk home again?" he asked, the cigarette hanging from his lip like an accusation. Sofia nodded. She always walked. The bus was $2 she did not have. Outside, the evening was beginning to turn. The sun had dropped low enough that it was painting the sky in shades of orange that looked like fire. Heat radiated off the pavement in waves that made the world shimmer and distort. Distant thunder rolled across the landscape like furniture being moved in heaven. Sofia pulled her thin cardigan around her shoulders even though she was already sweating. She had learned long ago that the moment before a storm broke was the moment when you needed to cover yourself. Lightning did not discriminate between rich women and poor ones. Her apartment building was 15 blocks away on Maple Street, a structure that had been old when she moved in 3 years ago and had not improved since. For stories of faded brick, windows with curtains that hung at wrong angles, a front door that no longer locked properly. She climbed the stairs slowly, her feet sending signals of pain up her legs with every step. The hallway was dim, lit only by a single bulb that hung in the stairwell, and it cast everything into shadow that made the walls look like they were closing in. The door to her apartment was 3C, and she was reaching for her key when she heard footsteps behind her. Measured footsteps. Unhurried. Robert Hargrove emerged from the darkness of the stairwell like something that had been waiting there all along. He was 56 years old with the face of a man who had spent every afternoon at a bar. Yellowed teeth. Skin that had a greyish undertone like old newspaper. He wore the same suit jacket he always wore, brown polyester with sweat stains spreading from the armpits. His hands were thick and meaty, the kind of hands that looked like they had never held anything gentle. "Rent's 3 months overdue, Sofia." His voice was like gravel. Like something that had been broken and never quite repaired. He moved closer until he was blocking the door, his body creating a wall between her and safety. Sofia's throat went dry. She had been dreading this conversation for weeks. She had rehearsed it in her head during quiet moments at the diner, had practiced what she would say, but now that he was here, all the words evaporated. "I'll have the money next week, Robert. I promise. I picked up extra shifts. I will have it. That's not the payment I'm talking about." His hand came up and grabbed her wrist hard enough that she felt her pulse throbbing against his fingers like a trapped bird. His breath smelled like bourbon and cigarettes, and it made her stomach turn. "You come to my office tonight. Alone. And maybe we can work something out." Sofia jerked her wrist away, the sudden movement sending pain shooting up her arm. She twisted her key in the lock, the mechanism was old and stuck, and it took precious seconds, and pushed into her apartment, slamming the door behind her and turning the deadbolt. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely manage it. Lily was sitting on the floor coloring with broken crayons on the back of a utility bill. She was 7 years old with Sofia's dark eyes and her father's copper-colored hair, though that was a detail Sofia tried not to think about anymore. That part of her life had ended badly. "Mama, look. I made a rainbow." Sofia scooped her daughter up, breathing in the smell of her hair, which was baby shampoo and sweat and something that was purely Lily. She held her against her chest and moved to the window, keeping the curtain between herself and the world outside. The sky was darkening now, the orange fire draining away and being replaced by deep purple. It was 8:34 p.m. when Sofia first smelled the smoke. It was a thin smell at first, like someone was burning leaves far away. But then it became thicker. Darker. It began to seep under the door in visible tendrils, and Sofia's body went rigid. She set Lily down and opened the door to the hallway, and the smell intensified into something terrible. Something wrong. "Mama, I smell something," Lily whispered. Black clouds were already pouring down the stairwell. Not grey smoke. Not the kind that comes from a cooking accident. Black, oily clouds that moved with intention. Sofia heard the crackle of flames somewhere below her, heard the sound of wood catching fire, heard the building beginning to sing in the high-pitched screams of metal expanding under heat. Her mind did not process what was happening for exactly 2 seconds. 2 seconds where she simply stood and stared. Then her body moved with an instinct older than thought. She grabbed Lily's hand and ran. The stairs were already hot beneath her bare feet, she had lost her shoes somewhere in the rush, had abandoned them without noticing. Down, 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 the sounds of the fire growing louder below her like a monster waking up. Smoke was filling the stairwell now, getting thicker with every flight, and she had to carry Lily and cover her mouth with one hand while the other held the railing. The railing was warm. Almost hot. They burst out onto the street as the flames broke through the windows on the 2nd floor. They burst out and collapsed onto the sidewalk, and Sofia was gasping, her lungs burning from smoke, her skin covered in a thin layer of soot. Neighbors were emerging from the building now, some of them crying, some of them standing in shock watching their homes disappear. The sound of sirens in the distance, growing closer. Robert Hargrove stood on the opposite side of the street with his arms crossed, watching the fire with the expression of a man admiring a painting he had just completed. He was watching the flames consume the building with a small satisfied smile, and when his eyes met Sofia's across the chaos, she understood. She understood with a clarity that felt like being struck by lightning. He had done this. A fire inspector arrived within minutes, waving past the arriving fire trucks with an expression of practiced efficiency. He was a man in his 50s with a clipboard and the tired face of someone who had seen too many fires. He spoke to Hargrove for less than 2 minutes, nodded, and made a notation. Electrical fire, looks like. Bad wiring. Very common in buildings this old. You're lucky the whole block did not go up. Hargrove nodded, accepting condolences that were not genuine, and he looked directly at Sofia across the crowded sidewalk. He mouthed something so quietly that only she could hear it. Should have been more cooperative, sweetheart. A neighbor, Mrs. Chen from 3B, had managed to grab some clothing before evacuating. She wrapped a soft cardigan around Lily's shoulders. The child's eyes were wide and hollow, and she was making a sound like a small wounded animal. Sofia held her, rocking her back and forth, counting the items they still possessed. The clothes on their backs. A borrowed cardigan. The photograph of Sofia's mother that she had grabbed without thinking, now singed at the edges but still intact. That was everything. By 10 o'clock that evening, Sofia Morales was standing on the corner of Maple Street with $5 in her pocket and her daughter's hand in hers. The rain had begun to fall, soft at first, then harder, and she could feel it soaking through the borrowed clothes, dripping down her face, mixing with tears she did not remember shedding. She had called her supervisor at the diner, but he did not answer. She had no family. No one to call. No shelter, no savings, no safety net. And in her other pocket, crumpled but still legible, was a letter stamped with the words "Final Notice" in red ink. A debt collector demanding payment for Lily's heart surgery. $85,000. Due in 12 days. What she did not know was that Robert Hargrove was not acting alone. That there was a woman named Evelyn Blackwell, a woman with a penthouse office overlooking Los Angeles and connections that ran through every level of city government and law enforcement, a woman who had orchestrated an entire system of cruelty that turned invisible people into even more invisible ghosts. What she did not know was that somewhere across the city, in a building full of men in expensive suits, a man named Dante Castellano was about to make a decision that would change everything. Sofia Morales began walking toward the hospital where Lily needed to be. The rain fell harder. The thunder grew closer. And somewhere in the darkness, everything was about to shift. The rain fell harder as Sofia walked, and with each step, her feet screamed inside those orthopedic shoes. The leather had split open somewhere around mile 2. Now at mile 4, she could feel blood mixing with rainwater, dripping into her socks, pooling in her heels. Her borrowed cardigan hung heavy on her shoulders, soaked through completely. The empty stretch of Pacific Coast Highway stretched ahead of her like a tunnel with no end, neon reflections from distant gas stations shimmering on the wet asphalt. Abandoned doorways offered no shelter. Closed businesses with dark windows offered no hope. Sofia's vision blurred. She had not slept in 32 hours. She had not eaten since yesterday morning, just coffee and the burnt edges of toast from the diner's garbage. Her body moved forward through pure momentum now, pure desperation, pure love for a 7-year-old girl with dark curls and her father's gentle eyes. Lily was safe. That was the only thought that kept her walking. Maria had opened the door at 11:15 p.m. without hesitation, had wrapped Lily in blankets, had whispered promises Sofia would return. But Sofia had to disappear into the night. Robert Hargrove knew everyone she knew. Everyone. And Evelyn Blackwell's reach extended into places Sofia could not even imagine. She had used her last $5 on the bus ride to Pasadena. 18 miles. 45 minutes watching the city transform from her neighborhood, where buildings crumbled and bars covered windows, into Maria's safer world of small houses with gardens and streetlights that actually worked. She had kissed Lily's forehead and felt her daughter's small arms tighten around her neck. "Mommy will fix this," Sofia had whispered. "I promise." Lily had fallen asleep in Maria's daughter's pink pajamas before Sofia even reached the door. Now there was nothing. No money. No home. No plan. Just the final notice letter crumpled in her pocket and the knowledge that her daughter needed surgery in 12 days for $35,000 that insurance had denied with a single sentence, pre-existing condition exclusion. The first headlights appeared at 11:39 p.m. 3 black SUVs came around the curve together, moving slowly through the rain like a hunter stalking prey. The lead vehicle's driver saw her figure at the last moment, a woman in a drenched waitress uniform, hair plastered to her face, feet leaving small red marks on the asphalt. The brakes screamed. The SUV swerved. Sofia threw her hands up instinctively, and her palms slapped against the hood of the lead vehicle as her legs buckled. She fell forward, her hand splayed against the wet black paint, her body too exhausted to resist anymore. Inside the car, in the back seat, Dante Castellano sat with his suit jacket draped over the leather. His white dress shirt was open at the collar, revealing the faint outline of scars across his chest. His dark eye stared at nothing, lost in the kind of hollow contemplation that only comes after you have ordered your own brother's death. Dante Castellano was 6'1". His shoulders were broad enough to carry the weight of a criminal empire. His hands were steady, always steady, even when they had signed the order that would make Marco Castellano disappear forever. He was 34 years old and he looked like someone who had already died 1,000 times. The impact jarred him from his thoughts. The SUV lurched. Voices shouted. The door beside him opened. Vinny leaned in, his large frame filling the doorway. "Boss, she's hurt bad." Dante looked at her, really looked. Sofia Morales lay half-collapsed against the interior of the vehicle, blood dripping from her feet onto the cream-colored leather seats. Her eyes were wide and terrified, her breathing rapid and shallow, her body trembling like a wounded animal. She wore a waitress uniform that had once been white. Her hands were calloused and scarred from years of labor. But it was her eyes that stopped him. They were the eyes of someone who had lost everything and kept walking anyway. They were the eyes of someone who did not know how to give up. "Where am I?" Sofia gasped, her voice trembling like a candle in the wind. I need to get back to my daughter. Please let me go." Dante studied her for 3 seconds. Long enough to see himself reflected back at her, broken, desperate, operating on nothing but will. Then he moved. His hand reached out and steadied her shoulder. "You are safe now," he said, and his voice came out deep and solid like an oath. "We are taking you to get help." No, you don't understand. I can't, I have to get back. My daughter is waiting. Her name is Lily. She's 7. She needs me." Sofia's words tumbled out faster now, panicked, desperate. "I don't have any money. I can't pay you. Please just let me out. Please." Pietro sat in the front passenger seat, and he turned to look back at his boss with an expression of genuine alarm. They did not stop for people on highways. They did not help strangers. This was not who Dante Castellano was. This was not how the family operated. But he said nothing, because the one rule that superseded everything else was simple: you did not question Dante when his mind was made up. "Take her to the estate," Dante said quietly. "Call Dr. Moretti. Her feet need treatment." The SUV pulled back onto the empty highway. Rain hammered the windshield. Sofia curled into the corner of the back seat, her body shaking uncontrollably. She could not process what was happening. She was inside a black SUV with men in expensive suits and cold eyes. Her feet were bleeding. Her daughter was 3 miles away in a borrowed bed. Everything had collapsed into chaos. Somewhere during the 30-minute drive through Los Angeles, Sofia lost consciousness. Her hand remained gripped around the final notice letter even as her breathing slowed and her body finally surrendered to exhaustion. She woke at 2:17 a.m. in a bedroom larger than her entire apartment. The ceiling was 12 feet high. The windows stretched floor to ceiling, overlooking the sprawling lights of Los Angeles below. Silk sheets, actual silk, she could feel the difference immediately, covered her body. Her feet were wrapped in white bandages. A small lamp on the nightstand cast golden light across walls painted the color of vanilla cream. Sofia sat up too quickly and pain shot through her feet. She bit back a cry. The room spun. She was wearing a borrowed nightgown, oversized, white cotton, and she had absolutely no memory of changing clothes. She had no memory of arriving wherever this was. Fear spiked through her chest like a blade. The door opened. Dante stood in the doorway wearing a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He had removed his jacket. A gold watch caught the lamplight on his wrist. He looked like he had not slept, and his dark eyes carried the weight of decisions no person should ever have to make. He was studying her the way a general surveys a battlefield. "Where am I?" Sofia whispered. "The Castellano estate," Dante said. He did not move from the doorway. 15 miles north of where we found you. You have been unconscious for approximately 7 hours. Sofia tried to stand and immediately regretted it. She sank back onto the mattress, her feet screaming with pain. "I need to leave. My daughter is with a friend, but she'll wake up and I won't be there and she'll be terrified." "Your daughter is safe," Dante said. "I made a phone call. Your friend Maria knows you are being treated. She will care for Lily until you return." How would you? Sofia could not finish the sentence. Her mind was fracturing with panic and confusion and the impossible reality of waking up in this place. "Why would you help me? I'm nobody. I'm just a waitress. I can't pay you. I have nothing." Dante stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. He walked to the window and stood looking out at the city lights below. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost broken. "Tonight I made a choice that will never leave me. My own brother chose money over blood. He sold what we built to our enemies for $2 million. So I made him disappear." He turned to face her. "And then my driver found a woman walking through the rain with no shoes and no home and no way out. A woman who had lost everything and was still walking toward her daughter. So I brought you here because you reminded me what loyalty actually looks like. What real love looks like." Sofia's eyes filled with tears. "I can't repay you. I don't have." "Your daughter needs surgery," Dante interrupted. $85,000 for a congenital heart defect. Insurance denied it. You have 12 days to find the money or her heart will never fully develop properly." Sofia stared at him. "How could you possibly know that?" "I know a lot of things." He walked to the window and pressed a button. A speaker crackled to life. "Vinny. Wire $85,000 to Children's Hospital Los Angeles. Create an account under the name Lily Morales. Cardiac Surgery Unit. Do it now." There was a pause. Then Vinny's voice came through the speaker, steady and professional, already in motion. "Understood, boss. It's done." Sofia could not breathe. The room tilted. She opened her mouth and nothing came out. She tried again. "I can't accept that. That's impossible. I can't accept that kind of money from a stranger." "You already did," Dante said, and something in his expression softened just slightly. "The moment you kept walking for your daughter instead of giving up, you showed me exactly the kind of person you are. That is worth more than money." He left before she could respond. The door closed softly behind him. In the hallway outside Sofia's room, Vinny and Pietro stood waiting. Their expressions were absolutely identical: shock, confusion, the kind of disbelief that comes when you witness something you have never seen before. "In 15 years I have never seen him like this," Pietro whispered. Vinny did not respond. He was already typing on his phone, arranging transfers that meant Sofia Morales' daughter would have her surgery. He did not question the order. You did not question Dante Castellano. But he made a mental note of this moment, knowing it would become one of those stories that gets told and retold in the family for decades. The night their boss stopped being untouchable and started being human. 3 blocks away, in a dingy office building on Crenshaw Avenue, Robert Hargrove poured whiskey into a glass at 2:22 a.m. He was not celebrating. He was not sleeping either. He simply sat at his desk reviewing tenant files, his small eyes scanning names and circumstances, looking for the next person he could destroy. His phone rang. The voice on the other end was cold and precise. Evelyn Blackwell. He recognized it immediately. "The Morales problem," she said without greeting. "Resolved." Buildings completely burned, Hargrove confirmed. Nothing left. She's got nothing. She'll be gone by morning, moving in with whoever will take her. Won't be able to fight the foreclosure. Good, Evelyn said. I'm acquiring that property next week. I will develop it into a boutique apartment complex for young professionals. $500,000 in revenue. I cannot have displaced tenants, complicating the timeline. Evelyn Blackwell was 52 years old. She had platinum blonde hair styled perfectly even at this hour. She sat in a penthouse office overlooking Los Angeles, her desk made of mahogany, her chair Italian leather, her walls lined with photographs of herself with city council members and police commissioners and news anchors. She wore a Cartier diamond bracelet and Prada shoes. She served on the boards of 3 hospitals and 2 universities. Everyone knew her name. Everyone trusted her. And she orchestrated an entire system of cruelty from her position of absolute respectability. I'm attending the Children's Hospital Gala tomorrow evening, Evelyn continued. They are honoring my recent donation. I will be receiving their Community Champion Award. The irony is not lost on me. Hargrove laughed, a sound like rocks in a blender. You sure you want to go? Seems risky. Risky would be to hide, Evelyn said. Powerful people do not hide from consequences. They simply erase them. I will attend the gala, accept my award, and make the situation with Morales disappear completely. She ended the call. Hargrove sat in the darkness of his office, the rain still falling outside, and felt something shift in his chest. A small tremor of doubt. But he pushed it away and poured more whiskey. He did not yet know that somewhere across the city, a man had just ordered $85,000 transferred to a hospital. He did not know that Sofia Morales' daughter was going to survive. And he absolutely did not know that his entire world was about to collapse into ashes, just like that apartment building. The night moved forward. The rain continued. And everything had already begun to change. The rain fell in sheets across Los Angeles at 4 in the morning, the kind of rain that made the city look like it was drowning. Sofia Morales stood alone in the garden of Dante Castellano's estate, her bare feet soaking into the grass, her hospital gown, borrowed, too large, hanging loose around her shoulders. The humid air clung to her skin like a second layer of shame. In her trembling hand, she held her phone. The screen showed the message she'd read 17 times: Lily's surgery was scheduled. The payment had been processed. Her daughter was going to live. But it was costing everything. She looked up at the mansion behind her, windows glowing like eyes watching her break. Through the study glass, she could see Dante. He was awake at this hour, 4 in the morning, sitting at his mahogany desk, and in his hands he held a photograph. Even from this distance, she recognized what it was. A family portrait. Before his brother betrayed him. Before everything shattered. 2 people, both trying to survive worlds that had already killed them. Sofia's phone buzzed. A text from Maria, Lily's neighbor. Her hands went cold reading it. He came by. Pounded on the door at 6 o'clock. Said he was coming for what's owed. Lily heard everything. She's terrified. Robert Hargrove. Sofia's blood crystallized in her veins. She ran inside without thinking, her feet wet and leaving prints across the marble floors. Dante was standing before she could even speak, his entire body going rigid. "Tell me," he said. Not a question. A demand. He went to Maria's house. He's threatening to come back. He's looking for me. Her voice shattered like old glass. I'm bringing danger to your home. To everyone here. I should leave. I should take Liliane. You are not going anywhere. His voice was deep and solid like an oath. He was already moving toward his desk, pulling out his phone. Where? She gave him the address with shaking hands. Dante made 2 calls. The first lasted 18 seconds. The second, 32. When he hung up, he looked at her the way a general surveys a battlefield, calculating, decisive, absolute. Go to your daughter, he said. Stay with her. Do not leave her room until I tell you it is safe. Sofia moved toward the door, then stopped. What are you going to do? What I do best, he answered. I am going to make sure that man never threatens anyone again. Meanwhile, across Brentwood, in a mansion that cost $7 million, Evelyn Blackwell was hosting a private dinner. The chandelier above the dining table cost more than most people's houses. The wine vintage was 1947. The guests were powerful: 3 city council members, 2 police captains, a development commissioner, and a federal judge, all of them seated around her table, all of them smiling, all of them corrupt. Evelyn Blackwell was 52 years old with platinum hair that had never moved in a woman's lifetime. Her Cartier bracelet caught the light. Her Prada shoes were silent against the marble floors. She stood to make a toast. To urban development, she said, raising her glass. To progress. To understanding that some neighborhoods are worth preserving and others are simply obstacles. To making sure people know their place in the world. The men raised their glasses and drank. There was a waitress, Evelyn continued, her voice like ice shaving against glass. A woman named Sofia Morales. She thought she could refuse Robert Hargrove and face no consequences. She thought she could stand against people like us. Such a dangerous misconception. She smiled. We have already handled it. One of the police captains, a man named Morrison with grey at his temples and blood on his hands, leaned forward. Castellano is handling his own business these days. He won't interfere with Robert. And if he did? Evelyn asked, her eyebrow arching. Then we handle him, too, Morrison said. One phone call. Done. Evelyn smiled and returned to her seat. None of them knew that one of their guests had not come for the wine or the conversation. He had come with a wire hidden beneath his Armani shirt. He had been trying to build a federal case against Evelyn Blackwell for 2 years, and tonight, sitting at her table, drinking her champagne, he was finally getting everything on tape. At exactly 5 o'clock in the morning, darkness still thick across the city, Dante Castellano stood in the staging area with 12 men in black tactical gear. Vinny was checking weapons. Pietro was going over the building layout. The men moved like they had done this 1,000 times, which some of them had. This was not a negotiation. This was not a conversation. This was a dismantling. Radio check, Dante said. 5 clear, Vinny responded. 7 clear, Pietro confirmed. All units, we move in 90 seconds. They rolled out in 3 black SUVs, no lights, no sirens, just the sound of engines and the whisper of the rain. Robert Hargrove's apartment was a modest building on a modest street. He was inside, half-dressed, standing in his bathroom when Vinny kicked the door. The wood splintered. The hinges shattered. The violence of it was simple and complete. Hargrove stumbled backward, his hand reaching for the counter, his face draining of color when he saw the men in tactical gear moving through his apartment like a tide. Castellano, wait, his voice was begging already, trembling like a wounded animal. We can talk about this. I didn't know she was yours. I didn't. Vinny grabbed his arm and dragged him outside, into the pre-dawn darkness, where Dante stood beside a black SUV with the passenger door open. The rain fell on his expensive coat, water dripping from the cashmere like tears he would never cry. Dante held out a folder. Heavy. Full. Open it, he said. Hargrove's hand shook as he looked inside. Financial documents. Insurance claims. Fire department reports. Bank transfers. Every crime. Every single one. Arson. Extortion. Money laundering through shell companies. Insurance fraud totaling $417,000. All of it documented. All of it certified. All of it waiting to destroy him. Those go to federal prosecutors in exactly 1 hour, Dante said, his voice like a blade wrapped in ice. Unless you make a call. A call? To who? Your insurance company. Tell them you are retracting your claim on the Riverside apartments. Tell them you are confessing to setting the fire. You have 40 minutes to do this, or I use every contact I have to make sure they bury you so deep that your family changes their name. I can't, they'll arrest me. Yes, Dante said simply. That is the entire point. Hargrove fell to his knees. Rain soaked through his clothes. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the folder. Please, he whispered. Please don't do this. I have money. I can disappear. You'll never see me again. I swear. You threatened a child, Dante said. You threatened Sofia Morales. And you believed there would be no consequences. That belief is finished. He turned and walked away, leaving Hargrove on his knees in the rain, completely shattered, completely destroyed. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the sun still hiding behind the mountains, FBI agents arrived at Robert Hargrove's office building and at Evelyn Blackwell's Brentwood mansion simultaneously. The operations were coordinated like choreography, black vehicles pulling up, agents in tactical gear moving into position, battering rams ready. Hargrove was arrested at his apartment 20 minutes later. News cameras were already there, already rolling. He was led out in handcuffs, his face streaked with tears and sweat and rain, his mouth moving but no coherent words coming out, just sounds of complete breakdown. The headlines would read the same across every news outlet by evening: arson, extortion, racketeering, fraud. 40-year federal prison sentence recommended by prosecutors. Evelyn Blackwell was arrested at 6:15 in the morning while still in her silk robe. Federal agents came through her front door with warrants and determination. She was standing in her marble entryway, her platinum hair disheveled, when they told her she was under arrest. For the first time in her public life, her composure shattered like ice. "Do you know who I am?" she screamed at the agents, her voice rising to a pitch that would have made dogs nervous. "I am on the boards of 3 hospitals. 3 universities. I will have your badges." The lead agent, the same man who had sat at her dinner table and smiled and drank her champagne, held up his federal credentials. "We know exactly who you are, Ms. Blackwell," he said. "That is why you are under arrest." Her office files were seized, every bribe documented, every payoff recorded, every family she had destroyed and every neighborhood she had targeted, all of it written down in her own meticulous handwriting. RICO violations. Conspiracy. Bribery. Fraud. The list went on and on. Her bail was denied. Her society friends stopped answering her calls within hours. By noon, every news outlet in Los Angeles was running the story. Sofia watched it on the television in Lily's hospital room. Her daughter was sleeping, medicated, stitched, healing, and Sofia sat in a plastic chair beside the bed, her hands folded, watching the news anchor describe the corruption ring as though describing something that happened to other people, not to her. The developer Evelyn Blackwell and landlord Robert Hargrove have been arrested in connection with an organized fraud scheme targeting vulnerable tenants across Los Angeles. Federal prosecutors say the case involved systematic extortion, insurance fraud, and arson. The broadcast showed Hargrove being led to a police car. It showed Evelyn Blackwell being escorted from her mansion. It showed their faces, their names, their crimes, all of it illuminated for the entire city to witness. Dante appeared in the doorway at that moment, a shadow in the threshold, and Sofia looked up at him with eyes she thought had run out of tears long ago. "It is finished," he said simply. And Sofia understood that he had done something terrible and beautiful in the darkness, something that would echo through the city for weeks and months and years, something that had crossed a line he could never uncross. He had made people disappear from the world, but in this case, he had made justice real instead. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only love can do that. 2 weeks after the arrests, Sofia sits in a hospital recovery room where machines beep in steady rhythm, their mechanical heartbeat matching the slow return of color to her daughter's face. Lily sleeps with tubes threading from her small wrist, bandages crossing her chest where the surgeon's blade had cut deep to fix what nature had broken. Sofia has not moved from the plastic chair beside the bed in 14 hours. Her hand rests on Lily's, careful not to disturb the fall line, and she watches her daughter breathe, actually breathe, without the shallow gasping that had haunted every night of the past 18 months. The door opens without a knock. Dante Castellano enters the way he enters every room, like a man accustomed to the world rearranging itself to accommodate his presence. He wears an open-collar white shirt beneath a charcoal suit that probably costs more than Sofia's entire annual salary from every double shift combined. But it is his face that arrests her attention, his expression softer than she has seen it, something almost like peace carved into the sharp lines of his jaw. "The surgeon came by an hour ago," Sofia whispers, her voice trembling like a candle in the wind. "He said everything went perfectly. The valve replacement is stable. She will need follow-up appointments, but—" She stops, unable to finish. The words feel too fragile, as though speaking them aloud might shatter the miracle taking place in front of her eyes. Dante walks to the window and looks out at Los Angeles sprawling beneath them, the city caught between day and night, lights flickering to life as afternoon surrenders to dusk. When he speaks, his voice carries the weight of a man unaccustomed to gentleness. "I arranged for the best pediatric cardiac surgeon in California. There was no waiting list. There were no obstacles." He pauses. There are very few obstacles in this world for people who know how to remove them. Sofia understands what he is saying without him saying it. Dante Castellano did not simply place a phone call. He pulled strings that belonged to him, called in favors from people who owed him debts written in blood and silence, moved mountains of bureaucracy with a single word. He had made sure that Lily received immediate surgery instead of waiting 3 months on a list with other dying children. He had made sure that the hospital's best specialist was available. He had made sure that nothing, absolutely nothing, stood between Sofia's daughter and her second chance. "Why?" Sofia asks. The question escapes before she can catch it. "Why did you really help me?" Dante turns from the window. His dark eyes hold a history of violence and power, but in this moment they hold something else, a kind of recognition, as though he is seeing in Sofia something he thought had been destroyed inside himself long ago. He walks to the bed and looks down at Lily, at this small sleeping child who has become, somehow, the reason he steps differently through his own house. "Because that night on the highway," he says slowly, "I had just killed my own brother to save my family. His betrayal could have destroyed everything I had built. So I made a choice, blood against blood, loyalty against treachery. And then you fell into my car bleeding and broken, and you were still fighting. Not for yourself. For her." He nods toward Lily. "You reminded me what I was supposed to be protecting in the first place. Not territory. Not money. Not the empire. Family. The people you would die for." Sofia reaches for his hand. It is not a romantic gesture, not yet, perhaps not ever. It is something deeper than that. It is the recognition of two people who have stared into darkness and chosen to move toward light instead. His hand is warm, solid, and when he closes his fingers around hers, the grip is gentle enough not to wake Lily but firm enough to anchor Sofia to something real in a world that has spent months trying to destroy her. In the hallway outside, Vinny and Pietro stand like sentries in tailored suits and gold watches. Vinny nudges his partner and nods toward the window, where through the glass they can see Dante and Sofia together, her small hand swallowed in his. Pietro's eyebrows rise slightly. "In 15 years, Vinny says quietly, I have never seen him sit beside anyone like that." "What is she?" Pietro asks, though he already knows the answer. "Salvation," Vinny replies. "That is what she is." Over the following days, Lily's recovery accelerates beyond medical expectations. The child wakes on day 3, groggy and confused, and the first thing she does is reach for Sofia. Sofia lifts her with extreme care, cradling her against her chest, and dissolves into tears she thought had long since run dry. Dante watches from the doorway, and something tight in his chest loosens. When they leave the hospital 5 days later, Sofia has nowhere to go. The apartment building is ash. Her co-workers at the diner have been told she abandoned her shift. She owns nothing but the clothes on her back and the knowledge that Robert Hargrove has been processed into the federal detention system, his sentencing hearing scheduled for 3 weeks away. Evelyn Blackwell's mansion is dark, her bail denied, her empire collapsing in real time as prosecutors release financial records showing decades of systematic exploitation. You will stay at the estate, Dante says. It is not a question. Lily needs a quiet place to heal. You need rest. There are rooms on the east wing with windows overlooking the gardens. Sofia wants to argue that she is already indebted to him beyond measure, that accepting shelter in his home might entangle her in ways she cannot untangle later. But Lily's small hand in hers speaks louder than her pride. She nods. The mansion is overwhelming at first, ceilings that soar like cathedral spaces, marble floors that echo every footstep, paintings that probably cost more than the buildings Sofia used to live in. But within 2 days, it becomes something else. It becomes home. Lily sits at the dining room table with sketch pad and colored pencils Dante provided without asking, drawing pictures of the recovery room, of the surgeon's kind face, of trees she sees from the hospital window. Sofia cooks dinner for the first time in months, pasta with tomato sauce and fresh basil, the smell filling the kitchen like a prayer. Dante appears in the doorway as the steam rises from the pot. He has removed his suit jacket and the casual domesticity of the moment. A dangerous man watching a woman cook in his kitchen feels like something sacred being allowed into a space that was built for violence. That smells like life, he says. That smells like memory, Sofia corrects softly. My mother made this same dish every Sunday. Before she died. Before everything fell apart. Dante steps into the kitchen. Tell me about her. So Sofia does. She talks while she cooks, and he sits at the counter listening the way people listen when they have finally found something worth hearing. She tells him about her mother's hands, about the yellow kitchen in the small house where she grew up, about the moment her father left and the moment her mother's cough became something that would not stop. She tells him about losing everything, about marriage to a man who turned out to be a ghost, about raising Lily alone and believing that some lives are simply meant to be hard. Dante listens without interrupting. When she finishes, he says, My father made me watch him do terrible things when I was younger than Lily. He said it was necessary. That mercy was a weakness that would be exploited. That loyalty was everything. He pauses. He was wrong. The evening of the trial, Sofia and Dante sit in the living room watching news coverage on a screen the size of a small wall. Robert Hargrove enters the courthouse in an orange jumpsuit, his hands shackled, his face a mask of shock that he has actually been held accountable. The prosecutor's statement plays across the screen, detailing the charges: systematic extortion, insurance fraud, arson, sexual assault, aggravated battery. Hargrove's lawyer requests a plea deal. The prosecutor accepts. 40 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. The judge's gavel comes down and Robert Hargrove collapses into himself like a puppet with its strings cut. Officers lead him away. Sofia watches without feeling anything. It is not triumph. It is not closure. It is simply the absence of fear. She has spent months terrified of this man, and now he is gone, locked away in a concrete box where he cannot hurt anyone ever again. 3 days later, Evelyn Blackwell's trial concludes. The evidence was overwhelming: financial records showing systematic fraud, recorded conversations of her bragging about which tenants she would destroy, testimony from dozens of families she had displaced. She is convicted on all counts. 35 years. Her fortune seized. Her society friends suddenly unable to recognize her on the street. The news shows her being escorted from the courthouse, and for the first time, Sofia allows herself to feel something. Not revenge. Simply relief. The people who had orchestrated her destruction were now destroyed themselves, and the world continued spinning as though their removal had been necessary all along. That evening, Sofia stands on the terrace overlooking the city with Dante beside her. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, and for a moment the entire world looks beautiful instead of cruel. What happens now? Sofia asks. Dante is quiet for a long time. Whatever you choose. The house is yours if you want it. There is a trust account for Lily's education, for her future, for every medical appointment she will ever need. I have arranged these things, not as a debt to be repaid, but as a choice I have made. You do not have to accept. But I hope you will. Sofia thinks about the woman she was, counting pennies, rationing food, working double shifts while a predator threatened her daughter. She thinks about Robert Hargrove's shocked face when he realized that someone had finally decided he was not untouchable. She thinks about Evelyn Blackwell's empire crumbling because she had underestimated the loyalty of a man who had decided that a homeless woman mattered. I choose this, Sofia says. But not because I am indebted. Because you remind me that darkness does not have to win. Dante reaches for her hand. His touch is careful, as though he is still learning how to be gentle. My entire life has been darkness. Territory wars. Betrayals. Violence so routine it felt like breathing. And then you fell into my car on a rainy night, bleeding and terrified, and you asked only one question, not for yourself, but for your daughter. You asked if she would be safe. That is when I remembered what I was supposed to be. Sofia squeezes his hand. What were you supposed to be? Someone who protects what matters, Dante replies. 3 months pass. The community housing project rises from the lot where Sofia's apartment building once stood, affordable units with fair leases, built with funds seized from Evelyn Blackwell's fortune and overseen by a non-profit foundation Dante quietly established. Sofia becomes the building manager, helping families like hers navigate the labyrinth of rental agreements and tenant rights. She returns to work part-time at the diner, not because she needs to, but because she wants to remember where she came from and who still needs saving. Lily thrives. Her surgical scars fade to thin white lines, and her energy returns like a color coming back to a faded photograph. She attends a private school where teachers marvel at her intelligence, her resilience, the way she draws everything she sees and feels with a precision that suggests she is processing the world through art rather than fear. One afternoon, Dante finds Sofia and Lily at the beach, the same stretch of Pacific Coast Highway where his driver nearly hit her in the rain. Lily runs through the sand while Sofia watches from a blanket, and when Dante approaches, she stands to greet him. He wears sunglasses and a linen shirt, looking almost like a normal man, almost like someone who does not carry violence in his chest like a second heartbeat. They watch the sunset in silence. The sky bleeds orange and purple, and the ocean reflects it all like a mirror of fire. You saved my life, Sofia says quietly. We saved each other, Dante replies. You reminded me that loyalty is not about blood and territory. Sometimes it is about choosing to protect someone who has nothing to offer but their truth and their courage. Lily runs toward them, her feet spraying sand, her face bright with the kind of joy that only children who have survived can truly express. Dante kneels, and she jumps into his arms. He lifts her onto his shoulders, and Sofia's hand finds his. They stand together against the darkening sky, a man who built an empire on darkness and a woman who taught him that light could exist inside it. This is the truth that no one could have predicted. In a world constructed on power and fear, two people found each other in the rain and discovered that sometimes salvation comes from the most unlikely places. Sometimes the person you save ends up saving you. Because darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only love can do that. If this story moved you, subscribe to this channel for more stories where justice prevails and love conquers all. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Share this video with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Drop a comment telling us what you think happens next for Sofia and Dante. More stories of courage, redemption, and unexpected love are coming soon. We wish you all good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and happiness. No matter how hard life gets, remember that after the rain, the sky clears. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We will see you again in the next video. Goodbye.